Good morning. Welcome to this Carolina CRE podcast here. I'm with my friend and partner in some degree, I guess, Jami Mullikan of Wonder in Greenville, South Carolina. It is June 5th, 2026, about 10:05 a.m. I'm sitting in the mountains of Boone in Ochota, where coincidentally, that's how I met Jami. My client is Fosco Companies. They've worked with Jami and his companies for a long time, and that's how he and I got connected, and we've become friendly. So, Jami, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for it. This exciting. It is cool how these our paths have converged and kind of multiple angles now, but it's fun to work with you.
Yeah, you too, man. You too. So Jamie is he owns Wonder. He's one of the founders of Wonder, and they are a marketing company. They work with a couple of our companies now, do a great job for us. But the reason I wanted to have Jamie on today was because his career goes pretty deep into the commercial real estate development world in the Carolinas, especially in South Carolina. So I wanted to hear about that. He's going to give us a little history lesson and fill us in on some things that maybe aren't as public from a development standpoint as you might see on LinkedIn or otherwise. So Jamie, tell me
Yep.
about you. Tell me about Wonder, your history.
Day and got into the advertising world in the 90s and started an agency really young. When I was 26. And oddly enough, over 30 years, it's amazing how relationships just kind of keep, coming together, going away, coming back together. And so jumping to today, Warren Griffith, who's my integrator at Wonder, was actually my first real estate client in 1999. And Warren was, I had started an agency and Warren was doing some work for us on the production side. He was like a print buyer and broker and was helping us with a client that had nothing to do with real estate. And called him one day on a project and he said, "Hey, man, I got bad news. I've taken a job and I'm not going to be able to help you anymore." And he said, "But the good news is I'd like you to come up here and meet this company that I've come to work for." So in 1999, through Warren, got introduced to Mike and Dan Collins, who owned a company called IMI. And that was the beginning of a 10-year run of really being deep in master plan community development, second home development, things like in Greenville, South Carolina, where we have the cliffs. We got a lot of lake communities at Kiwi and Hartwell. And so not primary residential through a general brokerage, not commercial, right? But not retail or anything, but really master plan community development, mostly for people looking for second and third homes. And that's what led us to, that was 99. And 2006, we got introduced to the Harrell family at Ochota. So we've been working with them for 19 years now, which is cool. So now we collaborate on them. But there's a history here for an industry in real estate that people don't really realize. And I'm going to get some of the facts wrong, some of the names, because it's some of this is urban legend stuff, but not urban legend, but just stuff that I had heard, but
There's a reason they don't value eyewitness testimony in courts because we have different ways
yes,
of remembering. So
but
we'll call it your truth, Jamie.
yeah, where all this industry started was in the 70s, early 80s. There was a guy named Dick Ford, and he was a developer. I believe it's Ford's Colony in Williamsburg, Virginia. It was a master plan golf course community. And he bought this property on Lake Kiwi. And I came up with this idea that you're not going to sell Lake Kiwi to people in Sunset, South Carolina, where it is. He was like, there's a bunch of people in New York who'd love to live here. So his marketing strategy was a book that I believe was called How to Retire Without Spending Your Retirement Income. And he ran ads for real estate in South Carolina in the Wall Street Journal. And that created this phone ringing, right? And this whole process of like marketing to out of state buyers to buy real estate here. And the thing about that industry that's unique that people don't realize is if I'm a developer and I'm spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to run ads in New York, I'm not going to let that lead go to a general broker, right? Because if it comes down and just goes to the best general broker in town and that customer decides they don't like your community, what are they going to do? They're just going to walk them next door and sell them another one. So in developer owned inventory like a Chota, probably 100, maybe not 100. I think Warren and I have calculated, we've counted up like 60 plus, developments. So we've worked with over 25 years now. But, that's the commonality is they're spending their dollar to sell their inventory. And it's a closed loop lead cycle going to a dedicated sales team. And that sales team can only sell that property. So that's when we talk about real estate, I have to explain it's not general brokerage. It's that type of of market. But there's a lot of other story to it too, a lot of other how it all came to be. But I think that's the real differentiator from a marketing perspective is that buying cycle of marketing out of market, generating a lead, goes to a salesperson where a relationship is going to be built. And that purchase is going to take 9 to 18 months. So back in 2004, we were doing lead gen campaigns and CRM and nurture campaigns that queued direct mail letters, So, but that whole buying cycle, oddly enough, 10 years, on the other side of that, is just a B2B sales cycle. So when I transitioned from real estate to technology, I realized, holy crap, like the real estate industry is actually ahead of these technology companies when it comes to how do we market externally, drive leads, manage them, and take them through a pipeline and a sales process.
That's great. So, I work with a lot of retail developers, and there's not a whole lot of marketing that goes into that. It's more, direct person to person relationship. In these master plan communities, why is the marketing important? Assuming the answer is yes, why?
Well, so it starts with the cool thing. This is where it gets really fun as a marketer and a brand guy. Is it starts with dirt, right? I mean, I got I remember doing the property tour with Barton Tuck of Brights Creek, and up in North Carolina, and driving through that. I have a video somewhere where I held the camera, as we were driving through. This was probably 2001. But you're really standing on beautiful property. Usually there's some type of natural asset like a lake, like a mountain, like a beach, and a developer has a vision. And they're like, hey, I can see what this thing can become. And I need to figure out how to tell that story. So it really is, it's almost like getting to work with, a startup from the beginning and casting the full vision to the end and coming up with names and brands and stories. And the primary difference between residential real estate and commercial is the head and the heart, right? This is the residential second home is a heart. I mean, this is where I want to be. Sometimes logic or not. I mean, I'm not sure if a $5 million condo is logical ever, but the heart is the tug there and the heartstrings. And then the commercial side's more head, right? It's more math, it's logic, it's cap rates and that type of stuff. So it's really fun on the marketing side to help bring that vision live, tell that story, craft the amenities, figure out how you position yourself versus the competition, and then be there for those phases of this thing was a field. Now the infrastructure is going in. So we're releasing, this inventory over here first. So that's a whole nother marketing side of this is inventory control. How do you, come to market with limited availability, mitigate your risk and actually allow the appreciation to go up as you, deliver on the product and sell more stuff. There's a whole underlying strategy to that side on the product development.
Yeah, and I think they've mastered that up here in Dakota and the Bluffs and beyond. So you said talk to the heart, sell to the heart. How do you do that?
I mean, I'm going back, man. It's been 25 years ago, where I used to spend a lot of time with John Reed Development down in Bluffton. So there was about 18 months where I ran marketing for John at Berkeley Hall. And then they were opening up Hampton Hall and he had finished Carlton River. And what he would say is back then, well, a couple of things that John said that are still true. He said, one, if you draw a line from Hilton Head and you go west, you're in Southern California. And he said, just wait 40 years and we're going to be where they are. Everybody's going to move to the Carolinas. This was 2003 and 4 when he was saying this. He said, we've got proximity to, to the mountains, to the beach. We've got 4 seasons of climate. And he was like, you're just going to see that the Carolinas are going to boom. So he was that visionary developer who could really see down the road. And then he said, the most important thing in destination real estate is the WW.
Website.
Yeah. What women want.
What was the first one?
What women want.
What women want. All right.
That's what he says. The buyer is the wife. It's like the husband.
So we're
maybe
selling to the wives.
the
So, okay. So you go to, when we talk about sales, the thought is that people buy emotionally, justify logically. Is that the embodiment of that?
Yeah, I
The husband
think,
and wife?
A lot of these communities back then. So there was, let me go back to the 80s and tie another parallel in here. So what was going on the development side was when Dick Ford was doing this stuff in the lakes of South Carolina, he had kind of gotten his thing going. And so what they started doing with these pre-sales, right? It's like, hey, we're going to go in. We're not going to build out. If this is 200 homes or 800 homes, right? We're not going to go build out all the roads and all the things and sell everything at once. So you have to have a logical phasing strategy of how you're going to go in. The easiest thing to do on lakefront is buy a piece of property, chop it up, and sell the lakefront stuff, right? Well, then you've devalued all your other stuff. So there's this whole strategy that goes into reservation or certificate selling, where on the land side they would release limited releases, like, hey, we've got 12 lots right now that are in this first phase of the infrastructure, and they would mix them up, right? And a lot of times it was like, well, once you get to the first phase, who do you think gets first right of refusal in the second phase?
Phase.
The existing homeowners, right? So as a CHOTA, you're very familiar with this, right? So you build up an affinity there. Someone may want that point lot, but that point lot isn't going to be ready for 4 years, right? So having a strategy that allows that inventory to come to market and get released became this kind of reservation selling. So it became very event based. So they would do like, hey, we're releasing this. We've got 12 lots. We're going to get 120 people, in reservations. We're going to get half of those people to deposits, and we're going to get half of those people to show up to this event, and we're going to get half of those people to be able to buy one of these 12 lots. And so
So
there
kind
was
of
this whole, cycle there that you had to manage. And if I have my facts straight, that was the land side that was happening here. In the 80s. And then you ended up with IntraWest. I don't know what they were called back then, but in Vail and Aspen and the ski resorts, you had the same type of thing going on, but it was condo units. So where we had lakes and oceanfront stuff, they had mountains and condos and destination ski resorts. And so they were doing the condo pre-selling stuff there. And at some point in probably the early 90s, the teams that were doing this stuff here and the teams that were doing that stuff there started cross-pollinating, and out of Greenville, South Carolina, this company called IMI was born. And they left Greenville and ended up going all over the world, doing reservation programs, selling real estate. And they ended up in Vail and all these other places like that. And that's when back then, so if that was early 80s and 90s, the other thing that had happened in the 80s was the PGA said a golf, right? So there was this big push to build golf communities and open golf courses. And so you had all these developers with land that the land itself, if it didn't have a mountain or a lake, right, may have not been that valuable. But then they were going to build the amenities and escalate the value of the land by building a golf course. So you had all these golf course communities going up, all over the country and all over the world in the, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And that golf course boom, and then even communities like just being in the Carolinas, like Kiowa, Litchfield, Wild Dunes, Sea Pines, right? All of those were massive visionary developers who had ideas, and every one of those communities went bankrupt. Some of them multiple times, right? But they still live today, and people are still there and they own their homes. But those developers were high risk. They were doing stuff. It's a multi-year project. The economy shifts. Now everything tanks. So there's been this, all those master plan communities went through all these cycles. But I do think in the end, what ended up happening was the golf and the alignment, the development vision and all that from the early 90s to 2008 was a booming industry. I mean, I think IMI was one of the largest real estate sales companies in the world, based right here in Greenville, South Carolina.
Are they still around?
They are. I think. Dan is retired, and I think Mike is in Florida, and they still, have. I don't know. They're not the scale they used to be, but they're still doing their thing. And it spun off so many other real estate sales and marketing companies through the years that we're all involved in that too.
So it's interesting you talk about golf, and of course, I live in where I live in golf
Yeah.
capital of the world, essentially,
Yeah.
or United States anyway. And Pinehurst has built another course, has acquired a couple, but you don't see that massive golf community development anymore. Even though golf is popular now as it's been forever, and since COVID. When do you think people get back on the train of building golf courses or golf course communities anyway?
Well, so that sparked an answer I didn't give you earlier. I'd answer that first. So what do women want, right? John came back and said, women want water. So his UW was what do women want? Women want water, right? So as he moved into Bluffton and out off of the, where there wasn't water, started building it, right? So Hampton Lake, you saw that, they were building those artificial lakes. And I think going back to, the man at the time was probably a passionate golfer. I mean, if you were gonna, join one of these clubs, it wasn't a you weren't an average golfer. You were passionate about it. So it was highly successful, ambitious, high net worth individuals that loved golf. And the wife is going to get to choose where. So I think now, I mean, with a Chota, we're in some conversations with some other clients. So I got out of that from really 2010 to when we started working with Fosco again in probably late 2023. But I don't know about golf itself. I mean, there's a private golf course being built here in Simpsonville, South Carolina, it doesn't even have real estate. It is just a golf course, itself. So I don't know how the financials on all that stuff's working these days.
Yeah, it doesn't seem. It makes you wonder, was it overbuilt, first of all, and it's just kinda catching up with inventory? The other thing is, I think the demographics have changed now. What you see, this is anecdotal on my part, is the courses that are being developed are, I would say, more exclusive than, middle of the road courses that you saw a lot of, and maybe those are the ones that got overdeveloped.
Yeah, and for me, like, I'm playing threes here in Greenville tonight, it's a par 3 course right next to my house, and playing in a golf tournament at the Cliffs on Monday, and I don't golf, I'm horrible. So, that's the funny thing for me is I grew up on a golf course, I have, been on the nicest golf courses in the world, I've walked a first round with Tom Fazio, but I suck at golf. So we're going tonight to give me a little practice in so I don't make a fool out of myself on Monday.
Well, it just takes one round to not make a fool out of yourself on Monday, so,
Yeah.
yeah. So you are in, of course, Greenville. Greenville is, I mean, talk about a monumental shift. I remember going there in the early 2000s, and it wasn't, especially downtown, was not what it is now. Put it that way. Talk about the evolution. And that's not even the word for it. Like it's incredible what's changed there. Talk about that and what you've seen in your time there.
I think, going back to the idea of vision, I think Mayor Knox White, I don't know him personally, but I've heard them say this multiple times that, all he's done to execute on the plan for Greenville, South Carolina was go to the file cabinet and look at what I think it was Max Heller, the mayor before him in the 70s, what he planned. So if you think about what developers do, they have a vision and they do this master plan. And it may take 50 years, right, for some of these things to build out, especially when you get into the big, new urbanism, mixed use developments, those things take a long time. Like at Chota, right? 25 years that they've been in that. So I think what he was doing was they brought in some consultants in the 70s and looked at the assets that the city had and came up with these plans and then really, you know, multiple phases over 50 years, and they've just had these files in a filing cabinet, is how Knox White says. And he doesn't, I think there's a lot of, he doesn't take the credit that he deserves. But I think the cool thing about Greenville is they started with what are the assets that we have? We have a river and a main street. And what can we do to bring back the life of that? And what I explain Greenville to people, if you think about a clock, right? Atlanta is at the center and you've got your perimeters that go around it. And that's usually the way metropolitan areas are built from the center out. The thing about Greenville is downtown Greenville is at 9 o'clock. So, because the river's there, that's where everything was started. And then what we have is, you go from there, you start getting into elevation because we go up to the mountains and towards TR. We've got this thing called Paris Mountain, which is an 800-foot elevation mountain 4 miles from downtown. So you couldn't build anything around it, right? So everything from Greenville came out and went across. And so I explained the center of the clock for Greenville is now what's considered ICAR or Hollingsworth Park, where 85 and Lawrence Road cross. And then you got downtown at 9 o'clock. You got, the airport at 12, Simpsonville, Malden, Simpsonville at 3, Powdersville at 6. And then you got downtown here. Now forget about north south because north to me is North Carolina, but Charlotte's actually east, which is just weird. But so because Greenville's over here at 9 o'clock, everything's had to grow out this way, and downtown is literally what, a mile and a half long and 3 blocks wide. So it's a town. It's not a city. But I think just, yeah, from growing up here in the 80s, I went to the Fine Arts Center, which was in West Greenville, and I would drive over Main Street every day, and you'll hear people say 20 years ago, no one went downtown. That's a lie. It was the late 80s really when it was kind of at its most desolate. And then by probably 91, let me see, I turned 21. I'll tie Greenville's history to when I was able to legally drink in
Legally.
93. And by 93, there was nightlife downtown. It was kind of central at Coffee Street. And so I think the mayor had a lot of good vision, but we also had people like Carl Sobosinski who came in and took a risk on putting a high-end restaurant downtown. And now he's a restaurateur with Dunzer Restaurants. You had business people who decided to come downtown, ad agencies that wanted that vibe. So, by 96, I was working downtown in ad agency offices. But I think it's
Yeah, I
just
know.
every 10 years, or probably every 5 years, there's been a pretty cool transformational thing in Greenville.
Yeah. No, I understand the Weston was a big deal too, and a
Yeah.
couple different things like that.
Yeah, in high school, the Westin I think it was boarded up in '84. And like I had friends in high school that would go in, climb into the parking garages, and they're like, there's Corvettes, like new Corvettes parked in here. They're like cars and stuff in there abandoned.
Wow.
It got pretty weird in the late '80s.
Yeah, and Main Street used to be a 4-lane road, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up here. My mom worked on Main Street. I don't remember that era,
Mhm.
because by the time there was a reason to turn, they had narrowed it and made it, what it is today.
Reason to turn, not just cross over it, right? Alright, so I got a question. Going back to these kind of visionary developers, and we know the types we're talking about. A lot of times, I think they probably already have a marketing idea in mind anyway. What are the tough conversations you have to have with them, um, and what do those yield for you?
I mean, going back to this funny story, I think this was probably the intro story for me and you. And I remember getting that call from so Chris Hill was my business partner back in 2006 to 2010, and he was like, "I just had a good call with these developers up in Boone, and they got a cool product." And I was like, "They can't afford us." We were doing stuff in Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas and Cabo, all these cool places all over the world. And my wife went to App State with you, so I had an affinity for Boone. But I was like, "There's, people aren't building $1 million homes up there at the time." And Chris like, "No, we need to have a follow-up call." So then we had a call, and it was Mark Harrell and Will Sears at the time. And the call was leads, right? It's like, we know what we're doing. We got a great product. I mean, at that point, they were 6 years in, and I think a Chota on the Ridge was launching. And so Mark was, starting in '88. Like Mark was a very mature, successful, wise developer by that time, you know? But it was leads. It was like, hey, how do we generate leads? And that's always been where, on the real estate side, where we've started is figuring out like who is the market, where's the market, how do we reach the market? And back then it was a lot of direct mail. We did direct mail, we did billboards, it was less SEO and Google, in the early 2000s. And it was more Our State Magazine, right? Whereas someone's not going to move to Boone, North Carolina without already having an affinity for Boone or Appalachian State, or they're committed to the mountains in the Carolinas and they don't know where yet. But you're not going to get a beach buyer to come to the mountains. So there's just a lot of research that goes into figuring out where are the pockets of these potential buyers and how do we reach them.
Gotcha. What makes a brand stick for development?
It's got to be authentic. It's got to be real and true. I think the especially in the early stage, developer credibility is huge. Like who is behind this and who has done this before? What is their reputation? So I think that there again another prop to Mark Harrell at Achota for what he built is he built an amazing reputation as he built that community out. Very high trust, And then for anyone listening who doesn't know, Mark passed away in 2022, was best client I ever had. And even though I got out of the business for 10 years, when he passed away, and then Catherine, who had worked for me back then, who had a great relationship with them, had re-engaged on the marketing side. And she texted me and said, "Hey, who should I talk to about a website?" Did not know that I'd started an agency again. And I was like, "Me." And she was like, "What?" And we got on the phone and she said, "Jamie, this is for Jay and Missy." And I wrote that proposal and I emailed it and I cried. I mean, it's God, I get hung up now. Mark was such a good dude, such an awesome client, a good friend. And unfortunately, early onset Alzheimer's took him too soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear a lot about it. I've worked with them for, I don't know, 5 years now or something. Hear a lot of great things about him. I didn't get the chance to get to know him though.
He was funny, man. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, he looked and came across as a country boy, and he was freaking sharp as a tack.
Well, I was actually, it's funny you say that. I was recording a podcast yesterday with Jennings Gray. I don't know if you know him. He's out of North Carolina. Is with anyway, and we were talking about all of the great companies that have come out of kind of this northeastern or northwestern North Carolina. Lowe's Hardware, Lowe's Food, Window World, just out of Wilkesboro. You got Spirit and Purse here, and all these great things. And that's sort of the kind of the mountain ethos is, people dress casually and they look a little bit, they don't look Wall Street, but man, they're
Yeah.
sharp.
Yeah. I remember there were some Markisms. One was, the difference between six figures and seven, don't you, Jamie? And I'd be like, what, Mark? Saturday and Sunday.
Best Mark story.
Man, there were some cool ones. I mean, just, when I think back really to that era, I go to the App State Michigan game, right? Because he was such a raving mountaineer, and huge donor to athletics. And when they beat Michigan, was that 08? 7. Okay. When that happened, I remember we took the Sports Illustrated and blew up like a big not life size is this big poster, and had that framed. And then we went up and had dinner with Mark and Missy and my wife Beth and I and Chris and Allie, and we got to see what the house that they had, which Missy called IKEA Rustica at the time. And when they built the house, Mark grew up playing basketball at App State, and in the gym there. And when they tore that gym down, she took the floors out of the gym, like got that and actually had those put into the basement of the house that they built. And that was a surprise to him. So, I mean, as much as there's a lot of work stuff, I just remember him being such a huge App State sports enthusiast. And I would always call him when I got out of the business and went corporate in 2010, I'd call him the first week of March because March Madness was, coming. And I just think basketball and, App State athletics when I think of Mark.
Yeah. But we're members of the Circle of Excellence here, and he's one of the founders of it, if not the founder. I want to say in the early 2000s or something like that. So he's monumental. His name's on the basketball practice facility here, among other things. So all right,
The
Jamie.
cool
Go ahead.
thing too, just before I don't want to skip this, is Jay, right? So now Jay's running everything. And it's almost like without skipping a beat, it's been, now probably 16 years, 15 years from the time I was working with Mark back then to now picking up in the beginning with Jay. The energy, the conversations, the strategic thinking, it's exactly the same. It's cool. Like I actually don't think about it enough because to me, we're just doing our charity thing, but working with Jay is very similar as working with Mark.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, he's, some guys have it and Jay's got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So most of us don't.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, real quick before we wrap up, Jamie, tell me about Wonder. Make your pitch.
Yeah. So Wonder is a marketing, media, and technology agency. We started really, so I had 10 years to think about if I ever built an agency again. And then I would asterisk and say, which I'm never going to do. But I left. It's a backstory on getting out of real estate. September 12th, 2008. I had great clients like Mark Harrell, but my biggest client was Lehman Brothers. And we were shot between the eyes. The entire industry was dead overnight. So when the real estate bubble popped, we thought it was the second home layer that we were in, right? We were just in this little microcosm. We didn't realize everything else that was going on. And so it crushed us. 2009 was, as I would say my depression era, both mentally and financially. And so we shut the agency down and I took a job for a company here in Greenville in a marketing role. And Chris Hill, my partner back then, he actually said, I'm going to be a developer. And we're still great friends and we shut the business down and he brute forced it through all those tough times. And he's a very successful developer now. He just loved it. But I went corporate for a decade and then came back and really saw the idea. I was like, if I ever start an agency again, I'm going to do B2B. Because as much as real estate's fun, you start with a blank canvas, you're doing cool stuff. The more successful you are, the quicker you're out of business. You see Jay's cycle, right? He's got units, sells them. All right, nothing, got to get more units going. So from that part, I realized I want to work with businesses because businesses grow. If we can help businesses grow, we can grow with them. So we really came to market at Wonder as a B2B agency with a high affinity for EOS. So I've been running in EOS for 7 years now. This is the second company that I've run in EOS. I was an integrator for the last agency where I was. And then I'm a visionary by nature, and that lasted 3 years, and it was an awesome run. I got my feet back into the business, got trained on millennials. That was a new thing to me in the agency world. And then we started Wonder, really focused on B2B tech brands that run on EOS. And so we've been doing that now for going on 3 years. And but from the beginning, what made us really different is, I'm a full stack marketer, been on the client side, have run, I ran a marketing and sales team for a technology company. And then my co-founder, Mark, has managed over $500 million in paid media. So he has all the media expertise. And then we were able to attract Warren back to 1999 in the real estate days as my integrator, and he's a high operational leader. And then we got Andy, who is our head of account service. So we are I would say we're a full service marketing studio with really deep experience across our leadership team. And then thanks to you, you've given us great connections like Hannah, Josh, our other designer creative. Just really, we have a great creative team. But what Wonder is 2 weeks ago, I would have said a B2B agency that works with brands that run on EOS. This coming Monday, before this thing airs, I get to actually announce that we are the first EOS licensee agency. So
Wow,
we are
awesome,
actually
man.
now a partner with EOS. They vetted us and they know that we're pure. And so we've actually earned the badge of being an EOS licensee. And in doing that, we're actually broadening our focus back now. So we're B2B e-commerce, real estate, hospitality and tourism, and manufacturing. So those are really the 5 buckets of clients that we've worked in over 30 years. And if you take those verticals and put a layer of EOS in there, like that's the pin on the green. But we also work with brands that don't run on EOS if they fit those verticals, and that's the green itself.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. I was obviously I knew that about you, but I think to myself, I grew up in the my dad owned landscaping business, and landscaping is a low barrier to entry, and so everybody overnight was a landscaper. And so, beyond the things you've already mentioned, your industry's similar, where there are gradations of sophistication, and there's a
Yes.
lot of people that do social media or whatever it is that out of their basement. Why, especially if I'm a real estate company, why would I come to you guys beyond what you've already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, if from a real estate perspective, I think we tangentially, like on the commercial side, as an example, a lot of the stuff that we do on the residential side, especially in pre-sales, where, we've got to do floor plans and spec books. And, you've got, sometimes you even have like, HOA and covenant documents. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into the residential side of the master plan communities. And I think there's a lot of not, stuff in the commercial side too. You've got property in the packets, and it's just you're not generating leads necessarily the same way. But I would start saying, if you're a real estate company, regardless if you're commercial, residential, or even home builders, we've done a good amount with home builders, that if you have a vision and you have marketing issues, then that's where we can help. Helping you understand your vision, figuring out what your marketing issues are, and then helping you get a plan that's going to work with your team. A lot of times where that vision, when people start thinking about vision, what they quickly realize is that's where I want to be in 10 years. And we're not telling that story today. And so when we start with clients, usually it's we don't tell our story well. We need a new website. And then when we back into that, what that really means is you're missing a brand strategy. So you need a brand platform, you need a foundation for your messaging. Yes, your website is the front door to that. That's where you deliver that message, but it's really brand. So usually someone's coming in, there's a reason, there's a why now. They've had some issues. It always starts with we don't tell our story well, so we can help on the brand side, we can do the web, and then we can help on lead gen. And if there's any relational sales involved where a rep has a territory or has contacts and there's a CRM, that's where the technology side of what we do comes in, really helping teams understand how to use their technology stack for both sales and marketing, just to, help carry those deals through a long sales cycle.
Nice. All right, one last question. I want to give you an opportunity here to talk about your wife, Beth, because I've never met her, but she seems pretty incredible. I know she just won an event. So talk about that.
Yeah. No, thank you for asking about that. She won't brag on herself, so I do it for her. Going back to just connecting in relationships, which is something I've always enjoyed doing. I have a friend, Zane Metters. Zane now sells real estate down in Pawleys Island. So if you're looking to buy in Pawleys Island, look up Zane Metters. And
Tell my
Zane and I,
wife.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll tell my wife. Three
Yeah.
W's.
Yes, exactly. What women want, water. Yeah, there you go. But in 1996, Zane and I went to the Cooper River Bridge run, and we're both from Greenville. We both went to Winthrop, and we were down the Cooper River Bridge run, and he ran into a girl from Winthrop who went to App State, and they were just talking, and we had done, the run was over. I was there for the Cooper River Bridge watch. I don't run, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to this oyster roast. You should come with us." So he and I went, and it ended up being Quinn Furman, who was from Greenville that Zane knew, but there were 5 other girls from App with her. And we ended up at dinner, and Zane introduced himself to Beth and said, "I'm Zane Metters. What's your name and what do you like to do?" Zane is a very high extrovert. He's great at connecting with people. She said, "I'm Beth. I like to mountain bike." He literally grabbed me by the shoulder and said, "Jamie, meet Beth. She likes to mountain bike. Beth, meet Jamie. He likes to mountain bike too." And so our very initial conversation was mountain biking. And so that's something we've enjoyed doing forever. She started doing triathlons in 2012, road biking. I've never been a passionate road biker. I've done some miles, but not many. But she really got into triathlon and she loved it. And so she started doing Ironmans in probably 2017 was her first. And she, as a kid, remembers watching Sunday afternoon, watching Ironman and Xterra races on television. She was like, "I want to do that one day." So she got into Ironman and she did fulls and halves. She ended up qualifying for the Ironman, the half Ironman World Championship. So we did that in 2023 in Arizona, and actually St. George, Utah, just north of Arizona. And then after that, she decided she was going to move back to mountain biking because roads are just not safe to ride on that much anymore.
Hmm.
People texting and driving and everything. So she switched to Xterra, and in her first Xterra race, a podium and qualified for the world championships. So that was 2024. We went to Italy. She got a race there. That was awesome. And then she had a pre-cancer period for about a year and a half where she was in a high risk breast cancer and decided to have double mastectomy. So she had that right after the World Championships 2024, took last year off, came back 3 weeks ago, went to Xterra in Alabama and won the national North American championship title for females
Wow.
ages 50 to 54. So she gets to go to Worlds again, but our daughter's getting married. So she's going to have to go qualify again next year so that she can actually go to the Worlds again because we can't make it this year.
That's
But
crazy.
yeah, but Beth is awesome. She's, and in addition to that, she works full time. She's a school nurse for the float nurse for the school district. She's training twice a day. So she's up training, working, swimming. I mean, she's a beast. And for those that know her, you never see it. She is here with us. She's doing things with us, and she has found a way to train, work, make family first, and compete like in a groove that's awesome to watch.
Lucky man. I look forward to meeting her one day, Jamie.
Yeah, no, yeah. Next time you're down, or we'll see you at a Chota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie. Well, I appreciate it. Anything to add? Last words?
I mean, this is fun. I appreciate you having me on, and on the other side, let me know how I can help you. And if there's anyone out there that I can help in any way, it's workwithwonder.com, or you can find me, Jami Mullikan, on LinkedIn.
JAMI.
That's right. It's Jameson.
Yeah. I like that. So, all right, buddy. Well, I'll see you soon. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Jamie.
All right. Thank you for it. See ya.
See you, man.